Welcome to BooTube Tales, where nightmares get a spotlight. Here are about 13 bone-chilling claymation horror stories that blend suburban dread with supernatural terror. Have you ever wondered what happens when Airbnb guests overstay their welcome? Well, let me tell you about the house across the street from mine. It's one of those typical suburban homes that got converted into a short-term rental. You know the type. Weekend warriors, bachelor parties, the occasional family vacation. At first, everything seemed normal. The usual parade of tourists with their rolling suitcases and GPS-guided confusion. But then came that group. I remember it was a cold Tuesday evening when they arrived. 3 of them, all wearing identical gray coats, moving with an unsettling synchronization as they entered the house. The first few days were what you'd expect, the typical sounds of people settling in. But something felt off. They never seemed to leave for sightseeing. No food deliveries, no garbage bags outside, just constant shadows moving behind the windows. Then the complaints started. The owner, Mike, began getting calls from neighbors about strange noises at night. Not the usual party sounds, more like humming. A deep, resonant frequency that made your teeth ache. Mike tried to contact them to end their stay early. He even showed me the cancellation confirmation on his phone. But they didn't leave. The house grew quieter after that. Too quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air before a storm. That's when I started noticing them, standing at the windows. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. Their faces pressed against the glass like children at a candy store, except there was nothing childlike about their expressions. Last night, something changed. I was about to turn in when every single light in that house blazed to life simultaneously. Through the windows, I witnessed something that defied everything I thought I knew about reality. The furniture. Heavy couches, tables, chairs, they were floating, rearranging themselves like pieces on an invisible chessboard. They just stood there, their heads tilted at impossible angles, orchestrating this impossible dance of furniture with their minds. The owner hasn't been seen since he tried to personally evict them yesterday morning. And now, every night, the lights flicker in patterns that look suspiciously like Morse code. I've started to decode it and what it spells out. Well, let's just say I'm putting my house up for sale tomorrow. Because whatever checked into that Airbnb, they weren't human guests. Let me tell you about the strangest thing that happened in our quiet suburban neighborhood last month. You know how everyone's been dealing with package theft these days? Those porch pirates swooping in to snatch our deliveries. Well, our community wasn't any different. It started with just a few missing packages here and there. At first, we all blamed it on delivery mix-ups or the usual random thefts. But then something felt off. The frequency was increasing and it seemed too targeted, too precise. Security cameras would catch glimpses of the same figure, always in a dark hoodie, always moving with surprising certainty. I installed a new doorbell camera system after losing my 3rd package that month. The footage was crystal clear this time. And what do you know? It was Mrs. Reynolds from next door. Sweet, quiet Mrs. Reynolds, who always waved hello and kept her garden immaculate. I couldn't believe it. I called the police, of course. They obtained a warrant and went to investigate her apartment. What they found, well, that's where this story takes a turn that still gives me chills. Every single package she'd ever stolen was there. Hundreds of them. All perfectly arranged on shelves like some twisted library. But here's the thing, not a single one was opened. They were just sitting there. And the strangest part, they were all vibrating. Every single box, humming with a subtle but unmistakable energy. The police found Mrs. Reynolds too, but she wasn't quite herself. She was sitting in her reading chair, staring blankly at the wall. There was a note taped to her forehead that read, "You should have checked what was inside." They never did figure out what was causing the vibrations. The packages were taken as evidence, but reports say they mysteriously disappeared from the evidence locker that night. Mrs. Reynolds? She's in a psychiatric facility now, but she hasn't spoken a word since they found her. You know what's really unsettling? Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear a faint humming coming from next door. And occasionally, when new packages arrive at my doorstep, I find myself hesitating before opening them, wondering what might be inside. I guess some mysteries are better left unsolved. But one thing's for certain. Nobody in our neighborhood has reported a stolen package since that day. Picture this. I never thought I'd be caught in a suburban nightmare, but here I am, living next door to Mrs. Kensington and her seemingly innocent chihuahua. You know the type. Pristine lawn, perfectly trimmed hedges, and a constant look of disapproval etched on her face. It all started 6 months ago when I moved into the neighborhood. Her chihuahua would bark incessantly day and night. At first, I tried to be understanding. Dogs bark, right? But after weeks of sleepless nights and interrupted Zoom calls, I left my first polite note. Would you mind keeping your dog quiet during work hours? That's when the passive-aggressive war began. Notes appeared on my doorstep, each more condescending than the last. Perhaps if you didn't walk so loudly in your house? Or, the sound of your television is disturbing Princess's meditation time. Yes, she actually named her dog Princess. I countered with my own notes, each carefully worded but increasingly frustrated. The neighborhood watch started taking bets on who would crack first. But nobody could have predicted what happened next. Last Tuesday, I found a brown paper bag on my porch. The type dog owners use to clean up after their pets. There was a note attached. Since you're so concerned about Princess's behavior, here's something to really worry about. Something felt off about that bag. What they found wasn't animal waste at all. It was human intestinal tissue, fresh human intestinal tissue, but that's not even the most terrifying part. Now every night, as I try to sleep, Princess sits outside my bedroom window, perfectly still, silent. And in the dead of night I hear it, my name whispered in Mrs. Kensington's voice coming from the dog's mouth. The police say they found no evidence of foul play in the neighborhood. Mrs. Kensington still tends to her garden every morning, waving with that plastic smile. But I know something isn't right. Yesterday, I swear I saw Princess wink at me, and Mrs. Kensington hasn't been seen walking her in weeks. I'm writing this because I don't know how much longer I can take it. If you live next door to a seemingly normal neighbor with a small dog, pay attention to the signs. Some battles are better left unfought, especially when your opponent might not be entirely human. You know, there's something unsettling about the way photographs capture moments in time. Let me tell you about what happened at our block party last weekend, a story that still makes my skin crawl every time I think about it. It started like any other neighborhood gathering, the sweet smell of barbecue wafting through the air, kids running around with sticky popsicle-stained fingers, and that comfortable hum of conversation that makes you feel like you belong. I'm Zoe, by the way, and I've lived in this little town my whole life. Everything was picture perfect that day. Maybe a little too perfect, now that I think about it. The way everyone's laugh seemed to sync up, how the clouds hung motionless in the sky for hours, and those identical expressions everyone wore. At the time, I just chalked it up to community spirit. As the sun started to set, someone suggested we take a group photo. You know how these things go. Everyone huddling together, adjusting their positions, forcing their best smiles. The flash went off, and that should have been that. Just another memory captured for the neighborhood Facebook group. But later that night, while doing research for my local history project, I stumbled across something that made my blood run cold. There, in the yellowed pages of our town's 1920 census records, were the same faces. Not similar faces. The exact same faces with the exact same expressions, wearing modern clothes but looking not a day older or younger than in our block party photo. My hands were shaking as I received a text from the neighborhood watch committee. "You're in the picture now," it read. Simple words that sent ice through my veins. I rushed to my bathroom mirror, and that's when I saw it. My reflection was there, but it wasn't following my movements anymore. Instead, it was frozen in that same pose with that same smile from the group photo. I'm still here, still moving, still speaking, but my reflection. It's trapped in that moment just like all the others. And I can't help but wonder, how many block parties have there really been? How many photos? How many smiles that aren't quite real? And most importantly, who's really behind the camera? Sometimes I think I see them, the others from the photo, walking around town with their perfect smiles. But they're not really walking, are they? They're just repeating. Like a photograph come to life, playing the same moment over and over again. So if you're ever invited to a block party in my town and someone suggests taking a group photo, well, maybe you should be somewhere else that day. Because once you're in the picture, you're in it forever. Moving into a new neighborhood is always exciting, isn't it? That mix of fresh starts and endless possibilities. Well, let me tell you about Daniel's experience. It's quite unlike anything you've heard before. It all started normally enough. Daniel had just unpacked the last box in his new house on Maple Street when the doorbell rang. There stood Sarah, the HOA president, with that perfect suburban smile and a beautiful welcome basket. "Just a little something from the neighborhood," she said, her voice honey-sweet. The basket was gorgeous, local artisanal bread, fancy cheese, and these adorable mason jars filled with homemade jam. Each jar bore a handwritten label, harvested from the community garden. Daniel thought it was such a charming touch. That evening, he couldn't resist trying the strawberry jam on some toast before bed. That's when things got strange. The dreams came first. Vivid, unsettling dreams of standing in the dark, watching his neighbors' homes. In these dreams, he felt an overwhelming sense of duty, an unshakable compulsion to protect. But protect from what, he couldn't say. When he woke the next morning, his heart nearly stopped. There was dirt under his fingernails, dark, rich soil that he definitely didn't remember touching. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the keyring he found on his nightstand. It wasn't his. With trembling hands, he examined the keys, dozens of them, all different. As he turned them over, he recognized the numbers. 4218 Maple, 4220 Maple, 4222 Maple, every house on his block. Then he saw the note. Crisp white paper, elegant handwriting he recognized from the jam labels. Your shift starts tonight. Daniel's mind raced. The community garden, the jam, the dreams, the keys. It all connected somehow, didn't it? He thought about Sarah's perfect smile, about how safe everyone said this neighborhood was, about how no one could remember the last time there'd been any crime here. He looked out his window at the pristine houses, the manicured lawns, the peaceful streets. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. As the sun began to set, he felt it, that familiar compulsion from his dreams pulling him toward the door. They say you never really know your neighbors until you've lived somewhere for a while. But in Daniel's case, he was about to get to know them very, very well. After all, he had the keys to prove it. Welcome to the neighborhood, Daniel. Your shift is about to begin. You know, I never wanted this job at Oak Valley Apartments. Night security always felt off. But rent doesn't pay itself, and the position came with a free unit. Pretty sweet deal, right? Everything was routine until I found that old leather-bound logbook in the security office. Previous captain's records, they said. Should have been boring stuff, resident complaints, maintenance requests, the usual. The first few entries were normal enough. Mrs. Henderson from 4B walking her dog at 11:45 p.m. The Collins kid sneaking back in after curfew. Stands at window for exactly 3 minutes, 42 seconds. How could anyone know that? I kept reading. Ms. Chen practices violin at 2 a.m., but no sound escapes her soundproofed walls. The Williams family dreams in unison every Tuesday. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the recent entries. The handwriting looked familiar, uncomfortably familiar, like looking at my own shopping list or meeting notes, voice getting tenser. Last night, I decided to stay late, check the security cameras. Nothing, not a single person entering these apartments at those times. But the log knew everything. And then, paper flipping sound. I found it, today's date. My name circled in red ink that looked fresh enough to smear. Subject exhibits awareness, recommend retrieval. Whispered. The worst part? I'm writing this now, but I don't remember picking up the pen. I don't remember making any of these entries. Yet here they are in my handwriting, documenting things no one could possibly know. If you're listening to this, I need you to understand. I'm not the one writing in this log anymore. The log, it's writing through me. And according to today's entry, this will be my last night on patrol. I wonder, who will be reading these entries tomorrow? You know that feeling when something's just off? Like when you look at someone and your brain screams that something isn't quite right. That's how it started with Mrs. Velasco, our neighborhood watch captain. At first, we all thought she was the perfect choice. Retired military, always punctual and more dedicated than anyone could expect. She'd patrol our streets every night, rain or shine, keeping our little suburbs safe. The crime rates dropped to 0 within weeks of her taking the position. We should have known it was too good to be true. I'm Liam, by the way, and I work the night shift at the local convenience store. I'd see Mrs. Velasco during her patrols, always precisely at 2:15 a.m. She'd wave, smile, that perfect smile, and continue her rounds. But one night, something caught my attention. The store's fluorescent lights hit her face at just the right angle, and I noticed her eyes. They didn't reflect light. Not even a tiny glimmer. Most people would have brushed it off, but I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. So I did something that probably wasn't entirely legal. I accessed the neighborhood's security footage. 3 days' worth of recordings, and what I saw made my blood run cold. She never blinked, not once. 72 hours of constant surveillance, and those eyes remained unblinking, unmoving, like painted glass. I confronted her one night, thinking maybe she had some medical condition she hadn't disclosed. I wish I hadn't. The way she turned to face me was too smooth, too mechanical. And then, Then she did something that still haunts my nightmares. She reached up to her face and with one fluid motion, peeled it away like it was nothing more than a Halloween mask. Underneath, underneath there was nothing but darkness. Not the kind of darkness you see in a dark room or a moonless night. This was different. It was like looking into a void that somehow looked back at you. I ran, wouldn't you? But that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, every single porch light on our street had burned out. Every single. One except hers. Her house stood there, bathed in the sickly yellow glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Mrs. Velasco still patrols our streets every night. People have stopped questioning why she never seems to sleep, why she's always so perfect in her duties. And sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I can see that darkness seeping out from beneath her perfectly maintained facade. Nobody talks about the missing people anymore. Nobody mentions how our peaceful suburb has become too quiet, too perfect. We just keep our doors locked, our curtains drawn, and pray that we never catch her eye. Those eyes that don't reflect light, don't blink, and see far more than they should. I first noticed something was off about the new neighbors in 4B when I heard the sound of laughter coming from their apartment. It was a warm, inviting sound that seemed to fill the hallway with a sense of joy. But as the days went by, I realized that the laughter never seemed to stop. It was constant, like a never-ending loop playing on repeat. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself that I was just being paranoid. But then, I noticed other strange things about them. They were always baking cookies, the smell wafting through the hallway and making my mouth water. They never seemed to play any music, even though I could hear faint strains of it coming from their apartment late at night. One day, I found their lease agreement in the trash chute. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to take a look. What I saw made my blood run cold. The lease was signed in blood, with my landlord's forged signature at the bottom. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. What kind of people were these new neighbors? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the lease agreement and the strange behavior of the couple in 4B. I decided to confront them the next day, to try and get some answers. But when I knocked on their door, no one answered. I could hear shuffling inside, as if they were trying to hide something. I tried the doorknob, and to my surprise, it was unlocked. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. What I saw inside made me gasp in horror. The couple stood in the middle of the room, their faces stretched too wide, their eyes completely black. They smiled at me through their peephole, their teeth sharp and gleaming in the dim light. I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling with fear. They knew I had found out their secret. They knew I was a threat to them. I ran out of the apartment building, my heart racing as I tried to put as much distance between myself and the perfect subletters in 4B. But no matter where I went, I could feel their presence looming over me, like a dark shadow that refused to let me go. I knew then that I was trapped in a nightmare, one that I couldn't wake up from. The perfect subletters were not what they seemed, and now I was their next target. And as I looked back at the building, I could see their twisted smiles in the darkness, waiting for me to return to my fate. In the small town of Willow Creek, there was a group of teenagers who ruled the school with an iron fist. They were known as the Populars, and they made life miserable for anyone who didn't fit into their exclusive clique. One girl in particular, Emily, was their favorite target. She was quiet and shy, with a love for all things dark and macabre. The Populars saw her as an easy target and took great pleasure in tormenting her every chance they got. One day, the Populars took their bullying to a whole new level. They cornered Emily in the school bathroom and began to taunt her mercilessly. They called her names, pushed her around, and even went so far as to vandalize her locker. Emily was terrified and humiliated, but she refused to show any weakness in front of her tormentors. As the bullying continued, Emily began to feel a strange sense of power building inside her. She started to have vivid nightmares of revenge and violence, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something dark and sinister was lurking just beneath the surface. The Populars, oblivious to the danger they were in, continued to push Emily to her breaking point. One fateful night, the Populars decided to throw a party at the abandoned house on the outskirts of town. They invited everyone in school except for Emily, who they had purposely excluded. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed freely, the Populars began to let their guard down and reveal their true selves. Suddenly the lights flickered and went out, plunging the house into darkness. The Populars laughed nervously, thinking it was just a prank. But then, one by one, they started to disappear. Screams echoed through the empty halls as the teenagers were picked off one by one, their bodies torn apart in a gruesome display of violence. When the sun rose the next morning, the only thing left of the populars was a pool of blood and a trail of destruction. The town was in shock, unable to comprehend the horror that had unfolded in their midst. And as for Emily, she was nowhere to be found. Some say that she had finally snapped under the weight of the bullying and exacted her revenge in a fit of madness. Others believed that something far more sinister had taken hold of her, using her as a vessel for its own twisted desires. But one thing was for certain. The populars had met their karma in the most horrifying way possible. And the town of Willow Creek would never be the same again. In our small town of Millbrook, there's something we don't talk about after sunset. Something that makes parents draw their curtains tight and children burrow deeper under their covers as the clock inches toward midnight. You see, mounted on the old water tower at the edge of town is a weather-beaten siren box, its metal skin peeling away like dead flesh. The neighborhood watch system was decommissioned back in '97, the wiring cut and the power severed. At least that's what the city council claims. But every night when the world grows still and the last porch lights flicker out, it happens. 13 seconds of ear-piercing wail cutting through the darkness like a knife. 13 seconds that feel like an eternity, as if time itself is being stretched and distorted by that otherworldly sound. Local teenagers, fueled by that peculiar mix of bravado and foolishness that comes with youth, turned it into a ritual. Touch the box, they dare each other. Just once, what are you, scared? If only they knew. If only they listened to the warnings. 7 teenagers have vanished in the past 3 years. Not run away, not moved to different towns, vanished. Their presence lingers, though, in the most horrifying way. Parents with young children report hearing their voices through baby monitors, whispered conversations cutting through the static at, you guessed it, midnight. But what happened to Tommy Reynolds last month? That's what finally forced me to tell this story. His mother, Sarah, couldn't accept his disappearance like the others did. She climbed up to that siren box herself, determined to find answers. What she discovered has haunted our town ever since. There, embedded in the corroded wiring like some macabre art installation, were Tommy's teeth. All of them, arranged in a perfect crescent smile. The worst part? When Sarah reached out to touch them, they were warm, as if they'd just been pulled. The police investigation turned up nothing, of course. They never do. But now, when that siren wails its 13-second song, some swear they can hear laughter mixed in with the sound. And if you look closely at the siren box, sometimes, just sometimes, you might see that tooth-filled smile gleaming in the moonlight. A story like the one I'm telling you now. But remember, in Millbrook, even silent alarms have teeth. You know that uneasy feeling when something just isn't right? That's exactly what's been gnawing at me these past few weeks, ever since I lent my ladder to Tom, my next-door neighbor. Seemed innocent enough at first. He needed it for some roof repairs, he said. Just a quick job, he promised. I've always been the good neighbor type, you know? The kind who'd lend you a cup of sugar or jumpstart your car on a cold morning, so naturally I didn't think twice about it. But when he returned it 3 days later, that's when things started getting strange. The ladder wasn't just dirty, it was different somehow. There was this sticky substance all over the rungs and this peculiar smell, like old pennies or copper pipes. I tried cleaning it, but that smell, it lingered. And the sticky stuff? It left these odd, dark stains on my gloves. I probably should have asked him about it, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way he'd started acting. Always watching from his windows, staying up at odd hours. I'd catch glimpses of shadows moving behind his curtains well past midnight. But tonight is different. It's 3:17 a.m. and I'm wide awake because I heard it. That distinctive metallic scraping sound that only my old aluminum ladder makes. Muddy ones going up the ladder step by step. But here's the thing that makes my skin crawl. There are no footprints coming down. I keep staring at those prints, trying to convince myself there's a logical explanation. But deep down, I know. Whatever climbed up that ladder isn't something that needs to climb back down. The worst part? This is the 3rd night I've seen this same scene, and each morning, the ladder's back in my garage with fresh mud and that copper smell getting stronger. I should probably move, sell the house, something, but I can't help wondering, what exactly did Tom need that ladder for? And more importantly, what's using it now? Sometimes I think I hear scratching in my walls, and I swear the copper smell is starting to seep through my vents. Maybe I'm next. I just wish I'd never lent out that ladder. Because now, every night at 3:17 a.m., I lie here wondering, what if whatever's climbing up eventually decides to climb down and pay me a visit? It was a dark and stormy night at St. Mary's School for Girls. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and sending shivers down the spines of the students huddled in their dorm rooms. "I heard a rumor that this school is haunted," whispered Sarah, a timid first-year student, to her roommate Emily. "Oh, don't be silly," Emily scoffed. "There's no such thing as ghosts." Just then, a loud crash echoed through the halls, causing both girls to jump in fright. "What was that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out," Emily declared, bravely stepping out into the hallway. As they made their way through the dark corridors, they heard strange whispers and felt icy cold drafts brush against their skin. "I think we should go back," Sarah said, her fear mounting with each passing moment. But Emily was determined to uncover the source of the mysterious noises. They finally reached the old library, where they found a dusty old book lying open on a table. "What's this?" Emily asked, picking up the book and flipping through its pages. As she read aloud, a sudden chill filled the room, and the lights flickered ominously. But it was too late. The words she had spoken had unleashed a malevolent spirit that had been trapped within the pages of the book for centuries. The ghostly figure materialized before them, its eyes glowing with malice. "You have awakened me from my slumber," it hissed, its voice sending shivers down their spines. "What do you want from us?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I seek revenge for the wrongs done to me in this accursed place," the spirit replied, its form flickering in and out of existence. As the girls cowered in fear, they realized that the spirit was the embodiment of the school's dark past, a vengeful force seeking justice for the injustices that had been committed within its walls. "We must make amends for the sins of those who came before us," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. Together, they set out to uncover the truth behind the school's dark history, facing terrifying challenges and uncovering long-buried secrets along the way. But the memory of that fateful night would haunt them for the rest of their days, a reminder of the power of school karma and the horrors that lurked within its walls.